ご経営かがですか、渡辺Dan desu. Today we are going to talk about accepted lies in the entertainment industry. And what do I mean by accepted lies? Well, these are things that are said by everyone so often that they become a truth. And no one bothers to really go behind that truth and say, is it really a fact? Now, examples of this are things such as, well, we're always looking for younger moviegoers when everybody knows that the most loyal moviegoers and TV viewers tend to be females 35 plus. The reason that people like talking about going after younger moviegoers, especially younger male moviegoers and TV viewers, is that they are new. So you can get by with a lot more, shall we say, basic content that doesn't have the kind of mature nuance that the more mature audiences require. Nevertheless, the Hollywood A pictures are always geared towards an older moviegoer, while the tent poles are geared towards younger ones who can be more or less beguiled by the next bright and shiny object, much more so than the older. However, the problem with going after younger moviegoers is that they ultimately get bored very quickly and want to move on to something else, while the business people want to stay within the same groove. We're watching that right now happen with CGI porn. Let's be real, that many audiences are getting tired of always being wowed with the latest and most complicated and most impressive bling. This shiny new object focus is not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to be aware it's short-lived. I remember when I was growing up in the 1970s, for a while, everyone was making disaster movies until they weren't, because you went from the enormous hits of the Poseidon Adventure and Towering Inferno to the incredible embarrassments of The Swarm. But they still continued making them for quite a while afterwards. And I believe that we might be seeing that right now. It's not just a matter of the writers and everyone else becoming lazy and slipshod. It's that the audience is getting older and is getting tired of the constant repetition. Remember that a fad is only as good as long as that audience that likes it falls within that very young age demographic. Now, what's the big lie another big lie that has gained traction over the decades? One of the biggest ones was the fact that it's more important to score big with key demographics on television than it is to have the largest possible audience. This was initially posited by CBS sometime in the 60s, and I can't remember if it was under Jim Aubrey, but I believe it was. However, it came into full fruition in the 1970s when Fred Silverman took over ABC, and he started saying with a completely straight face that, well, ABC, it might not have the largest numbers, but it has the largest number of younger viewers. And then he proceeded to add in shows like Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley, which happened to catch on with younger viewers and would eventually become the big hits. But he started out by saying that the demographics were more important and then trying to backward engineer the proof. He happened to be very lucky in the sense that that proof happened to work because the public was ready to have a feature film, a television version of the feature film American Graffiti, and they even starred Ron Howard. So you see that Fred Silverman was very smart. But over time, you still have a lot of the older execs continuing to say, he or she who has the most viewers wins. And that has, in fact, proven to be much more accurate, especially now when we look at most of the networks having more than half of their audiences falling outside of the key demographic, yet still being highly more positive for advertisers than basic cable or new streaming or online. Note that advertisers still trying to find that magic potion that will get them into the Google verse or the YouTube verse or any of these other areas. in anywhere near the same kind of success they had in terms of the cost per thousands for network television. So you're seeing that certain ideas take hold and then cling on like a spider. Anyway, the one I'm going to talk about today as the topic is this whole idea that the motion picture business is driven by the foreign market because more money is made in Europe and Asia than is made in the United States. I gotta tell you that just like Fred Silverman's claim that he who has the youngest demographic wins as opposed to he who has the most audiences win, this is spin that has been accepted by people because it's easy. It's easier to backward engineer what sounds like a solid business presence out of a fact than to deal with the fact that that fact is a problem. And what do I mean by that? Let's get real. If your biggest audience is not your home market, it's not because your stuff is so special it works outside of your own boundaries. No, it means you've screwed up your home market. Throughout most of Hollywood's history, the bulk of its revenues came out of the United States. And the bulk of its revenues coming out of the United States was largely based on the fact that American audiences liked movies that were America-specific. Now, if more people overseas are liking American movies than American audiences are, proportionately, then that must mean you are misdelivering to the United States audience, which I believe is exactly what's happening. The fact that the money has been so impressive for so long, people are able to justify it. Well, it doesn't really matter if we're kind of screwing up the United States because we're still profitable. And as long as everyone remains profitable, this is fine. Just like the myth that the audiences want increasingly diverse content, despite the fact that increasingly diverse content, especially pandering increasingly diverse content, was losing money little by little, it still was overall profitable. So nobody was really concerned. But now that we've had massive failures in that, people are starting to take another look. Moreover, now the foreign market has fallen out of love with United States product to the point where a movie like Elemental is bombing big time in the foreign market. So is Little Mermaid. So is the disappointment of The Flash. Therefore, that worshiping of the fact that things are working overseas and that's our biggest market because, oh, we have bigger populations overseas. That may be true. But again, you've always had big markets overseas. When I was living in Japan, you had a lot of American movies doing very, very well in Japan at that time. So that's always been a norm. But the US was still the largest audience. Europe and Asia do indeed follow cultural trends from the United States. And guess what their newest cultural trend they're following from the United States is? We don't like this kind of movie anymore. So now we're seeing the danger of relying too much on the foreign market. Once that foreign market stumbles, it's much more difficult to get it back than it is to get the domestic market back. That is why the industry is trying to pivot back to getting the US audience back. But there's been so much abuse heaped on the US audience that it is indeed become a problem. Hollywood is trying to make it up. And remember, a hit will cause forgiveness. And once you have forgiveness, you will be back to making good money. But it's going to mean that the US audience needs to be looked at, not just merely sloughed aside as, well, our secondary market is now domestic. No, your primary is domestic. So now go back to focusing on that. And the European market, the Asian market will indeed follow.
I did say enjoy our last film, Mr. Buddha.
Enjoy? My dear fellow, we are not so old-fashioned as that. It is not the purpose of the modern cinema to entertain. Never, no. We use our cameras today as a surgeon uses his scalpel. Ah, Schwarzbacher entertainment, really.
Made a lot of money, didn't it?
Money, money, money. I never concern myself with these matters.